All right, we're about to get started, friend.
Okay.
Welcome to the Remnant by Reclaim 611 podcast. I'm Paula.
And I'm Carrie.
And we are happy to be back again. It's been a while.
It has been a while. It's kind of sad that it's been a while, but I mean, the summer's been just nuts.
Right.
As we were just talking about, like school's in a couple of weeks, and maybe things will be more normal then.
Yeah, when school starts.
Yeah, we can hope.
We can hope, exactly. Well, we have a very, very special guest today, and Carrie, I'm going to let you have the honor of introducing our guest or telling us a story about our guest.
Well, actually, I am so excited about today because we have Dr. Rhiannon Bell here with us from A21, A21 campaign. And if you don't know about the A21 campaign, you need to keep listening because really this hits like a personal streak with me because as a co-founder of Reclaim, and I could speak for our other co-founders, A21 has been an inspiration to us since we started, and we love the founders, Nick and Christine Kane. I mean, we were just talking about, I listened to her Equip and Empower podcast, read her books. She's an incredible inspiration. And so we're just so excited to hear about what A21's doing and let you guys all know about A21 if you don't. So welcome, Dr. Bell.
Thank you, Carrie and Paula. Lovely to be here with you guys today.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Bell. We would love to know more about you and what your role is.
Yes, so my background, I'm Australian, that's the accent. I'm a clinical psychologist and worked in private practice in Australia for 9 years and then was offered this job as Global Director of Aftercare for A21. And I'd grown up with Christine Kane coming to my youth ministry when I was 15 and preaching to my youth group. So I knew of Chris and Nick Kane and knew of A21 too. So when I was offered this role, it was like a dream job, still is a dream job. And I packed my bags and sold everything I owned in Australia and moved to the States with 4 suitcases and a whole lot of hope and faith and excitement for the adventure to come. So that was back in January 2018.
Wow. You were in her youth group.
No, not in her youth group, but she would come and preach at my church to my youth ministry.
That is so cool. And then that was, how many years ago did you say you moved here?
That was January 2018 that I moved to our California office.
Okay.
And then recently last year, during COVID, made the move, our global support office. We've set up office in Texas, in Fort Worth, so moved to Fort Worth last September. So
wow. Well, welcome to Texas.
Yeah. Maybe I'll pick up a like Aussie Texas accent. Who knows?
All you have to do is just say the word y'all.
Yeah, that's it.
Just say y'all.
Y'all.
Yeah. And you're Texas.
There's quite a few things I need to work on still, like my R's. Like people don't understand when I ask for water. We'll get there. It's like a whole different language.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole culture itself here in Texas. So, but we're excited to have you.
California, but yeah, I'm loving Texas, and people are so friendly here. I love the friendliness of Texas.
Well, I've heard California's been pretty hot recently, so you probably is not really that much different right now.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So I am coping. I've learned to just stay indoors with the air conditioner on high. So
yeah, the humidity is really the killer here.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Bell, tell us a little bit about A21.
Yeah, so A21 launched in 2008, and our mission is to abolish slavery everywhere forever. So A21, people often ask, what does it stand for? And it means abolishing slavery or injustice in the 21st century. So it's a big mission, big vision, but we believe that we can do it with great partners. We recognize we can't do it alone, but with great people banding together, we certainly are going to give it a good shot. So we're an anti-human trafficking organization, a global anti-human trafficking organization. We have 14 offices in 19 different countries around the world. And we have programs including Reach, Rescue, and Restore. So Reach is all about awareness and prevention of human trafficking. Rescue is where we partner with authorities to secure the freedom of victims of human trafficking and convict traffickers. And we have a legal program through that. And we also have hotlines in three different countries, Greece, Bulgaria, and South Africa. and then Restore is the department that I oversee, which is our aftercare department. And so the aim of that really is to empower victims of trafficking to achieve restoration and independence. And we do that through different programs within aftercare, including freedom centres, accommodation, repatriation and relocation, and providing holistic aftercare services to survivors.
Wow. So I noticed that this is a global thing, right? Um, how many offices or locations do you have in the U.S.?
Yeah, in the US, we've got an office in North Carolina that's an aftercare location, and we're excited to be launching our DFW aftercare office in December. So
Awesome.
we are bringing aftercare to survivors of trafficking to Dallas, Fort Worth area. So we've got a team on the ground here who have been doing a feasibility study. We've got a location for that, and we will be launching in December. So we're really excited about that. And our global support office is here in Texas, and we've got one in California too.
We are so excited you guys are here.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is only the second in the U.S., right? North Carolina and Texas.
Yeah.
We're so glad you picked us.
Well, I feel like Texas is becoming a bit of a central location for a lot of anti-trafficking organizations are based out of Texas, we're noticing. And I love the unity and collaboration between all of the organizations here. I recently went to a partner day with 10 different organizations, anti-trafficking organizations, and just the collaboration of everyone wanting to work together. There's not the competitiveness that you sometimes see. Everyone's just so supportive of each other. And I think from that, we can really set a great example. Texas can lead the way in showing how all of these different anti-trafficking organizations can really collaborate and work together to make a difference and change things and really assist in preventing human trafficking and really supporting survivors holistically.
I love that that's your experience, because that unity is really that's how they fight the best, right? Is when we're united. And so that's exciting. That's been your experience since you've been here. Really encouraging.
Yeah.
It's been great.
So with the aftercare program here in Texas, what kind of services, what does aftercare look like?
Right. Sorry. Aftercare, it's a very comprehensive sort of service delivery package that we do. So we've got our Freedom Centre. So I'll start with explaining that. So a Freedom Centre is like a drop-in day centre where survivors can come in and they can meet with their caseworkers. So our caseworkers are often social workers. So they meet with their caseworkers. They can receive counselling. They can access sort of our grab and go room where they can come and get free resources such as clothing and toiletries and goods for their children. They can do cooking classes, art classes. They can just come and really relax and experience a sense of community. And our Freedom Centres, they're a beautiful space. So we've got Freedom Centres our first one was actually in North Carolina, and then we opened them in Greece, Bulgaria. We just launched one in South Africa in Cape Town in December last year, and we'll have our Dallas Fort Worth Freedom Centre opening this year. So the aim is that survivors walk in and they just feel really safe. It's a warm environment, a relaxing environment. And when we opened, it was our Bulgaria Freedom Centre, a survivor walked in and she said, I feel like a princess in a castle. And like, you guys made this just for me. So we really want to bring value to our survivors and have them just feel so loved and accepted and so safe in this environment. So yeah, it's a drop-in day centre concept where they can come and receive aftercare services, and they can come and go as they please. They can come and do laundry there, shower there. So that's a Freedom Centre, and then we offer accommodation as well. So we've got aftercare offices, I should explain, in 7 different countries. So we're in Greece, Bulgaria, Ukraine, South Africa, the US, in North Carolina, Thailand, and Cambodia. So it does look a little bit different depending on the country and the culture, but generally we have our aftercare programs. So we've got the Freedom Centres. We also have a shelter in Greece that's a 3-month sort of stabilization shelter where survivors can come in, stay for a few months and sort of think about, okay, what are my next steps? So often in Greece, we've got survivors coming in from different countries, from Europe, from Africa. They've been trafficked into Greece or into surrounding nations and end up in Greece. And so often these survivors are like newly out of trafficking and wondering, okay, what are my next steps? Do I want to try and stay in Greece? Because sometimes the situation at home is just really horrendous and there's conflict and there's risk of re-trafficking if they go back, or risk of violence. So sometimes we have quite a few survivors who do choose to stay in Greece, and we'll support them legally to be able to do that, to get appropriate visas. We'll support them in looking at, okay, what are my next steps? So in Greece, we have 5 independent apartments. So a lot of our survivors that we work with actually want to live independently. And so they might stay in the shelter for a few months and then decide, okay, I do want to stay in Greece and learn the language so that I can get employment. So often when survivors come in, and this is globally, not just in Greece, when we say, what are your goals? Often it's, I want to get housing. I want to get my kids back. A lot of survivors of trafficking will have children that aren't with them, and they want that custody of their children back. And I want to get a job. I want to be able to support myself. So we really work with them to sort of take the steps to be able to help support them in that journey. So we have independent apartments. We have those in North Carolina too, and we're hoping to bring them into Dallas, Fort Worth, Aftercare services as well. So we also offer medical, psychological, dental support, legal assistance, employment, job readiness training, employment opportunities. We'll support them to study as well. In Cambodia, a lot of our child survivors will go into foster care, so we really work with the government to place them in safe housing, foster care housing in Cambodia. Wow. So it looks different in every country, but they're the main categories. We really want to provide a holistic support for the survivors to get them to a place of restoration and independence, and so there's low vulnerability to re-victimization. So by the time they're graduating from our program, we want them to be flourishing and be able to support themselves, be self-sufficient, have reintegrated back into the community, and really be thriving in life.
That's awesome.
I know. I just love to hear what's going on around the world and like what this looks like, you know, not just here. It's so beautiful, and y'all are doing an amazing job, and just so much favor over these freedom houses, and excited to see this happen in Fort Worth.
Yeah, Fort Worth's going to be our best one.
That's right.
That's right.
So
everything's bigger and better in Texas.
That's right. See, you're already learning. She's already learning.
Already.
I was curious, just to clarify. So a lot of times survivors come in and say they want housing, but this is not housing. This is a drop-in center.
Yes.
But you guys help facilitate housing if that's a need for them.
Definitely. So housing is a big need.
Yeah.
So the Freedom Centre is like a drop-in centre, and it's part of our community model of aftercare. So probably about 5 years ago, we adapted to like this community model of aftercare where, because we were noticing there was a trend that survivors were wanting to be able to reintegrate into the community and live independently. And now there's definitely a need for long-term shelter care in some circumstances, and we work with amazing partner organisations who provide that long-term residential care. But we also noticed that survivors were wanting to live independently. So the Freedom Centre is more of a drop-in day centre, but then we offer housing support as well. So we provide rent assistance to survivors, and we'll also help to set them up in like an A21 apartment where they can live independently. So for example, in Cape Town, South Africa, we just opened 2 independent apartments for survivors who are coming out of a partner organisation's shelter, and we work closely with that partner organisation, and they've been in that shelter for 1 to 2 years, and now before they sort of transition back to living completely on their own, they're moving into their own independent apartment that A21 funds and furnishes and supports them during that time, but they're living alone, and then that they may live there for 6 to 12 months before transitioning out and graduating from the program. So we're hoping to bring in that model into the DFW area as well, where we'll have A21 apartments, and we'll also be providing rent assistance to apartments and working with great partner organisations where survivors may be in their residential shelters, but they can come into our Freedom Centre as well to receive services.
Wow. That's so awesome.
So it's Freedom Center and then a shelter rental.
Freedom Centre, and then we call it like long-term accommodation.
Okay, that's it. Long-term accommodation. Okay, got it.
And we really work with survivors for what their needs are. So it's a very survivor-driven program. So we don't tell survivors you must complete these sort of 10 steps and before you graduate. And it's when survivors come into our program, our caseworkers will sit down with them. They'll do a case management plan, and they'll ask the survivor, okay, what are your goals? What are your hopes and dreams? What would you love? And then how can we support you on that journey to achieving those hopes and dreams? So for some, it may be, I really want to get my kids back. And so our team will work with them to get them in accommodation where it's safe accommodation, and they're maybe earning an income. They've got a safe and stable job to where they'll then be able to receive their kids back. And we've seen those cases in North Carolina, which is always so beautiful when we see that reunification with the children and the mothers.
What I really love is I'm like hearing it's, and what I appreciate about how you guys run your centers and what you're doing is it's so individualized.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's really like every person is unique just in general, and everyone's trauma, although there are things that are the same and what they go through and similarities, they're different. Like every person's trauma is different. Every person's story is different. And you guys are approaching it in this very individualized way, and not just this cookie cutter, like you must do this and pass these tests and then get here. And so I love that about it. And I feel like that leads to flourishing much faster than having people go through a certain program that doesn't necessarily fit for everybody. But like, how beautiful is it to say, like, what are your hopes and dreams, and let's get you there because that's what you need and that's what you want. So I really love that.
Yeah, we often say it's all about the one. So we celebrate the one survivor who's just managed to escape. So many of our survivors managed to bravely escape their trafficking. So we celebrate the one survivor coming in, the one survivor graduating. Sometimes we can be easy to get caught up in numbers, and the numbers and statistics for human trafficking can be overwhelming. So that's why we really celebrate the one and put the value on the one, and work closely with them to achieve their goals.
I love it, the one. I love it. So how would a survivor, they, I guess, get into the program?
Yeah, so we work closely with law enforcement in our different countries who will often refer. So in North Carolina, FBI often refers to our program. We also receive referrals from different lawyers who are sort of working with the survivors through our hotlines in our various countries, through referral partners as well. So generally it's law enforcement, hotlines, local partner organizations, government services who refer to our program.
Got it. Okay.
Awesome.
So because I'm sure not every survivor, knows what to do or who to reach out to when they're ready for something different, or when they're ready, to get on that path to having a different life.
Definitely. So even calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline, and they can make a referral to a local organization within the survivors community. That's a good place for survivors to start. And even emailing our info at A21 email as well. So our aftercare services won't be operational in the DFW area until the end of the year, but we can always refer to great partner organizations in the meantime.
Gotcha. So you say that you all are in 7 different countries, right? Is it 7?
We have aftercare operations in 7 different countries.
Okay.
But A21 is actually in 14 different countries.
Got it. All right. So 14 different countries. That's awesome. So what are some challenges that you all face with having such a wide reach?
Yeah, personally, The late night Zoom calls and the early morning Zoom calls for the time zone differences is one personal. That I love it. Gosh, look, I think sometimes the challenges can be the statistics are overwhelming, and that's why we really celebrate the one. And when we see that the numbers for trafficking victims, that can be really overwhelming. But we make sure that we put the focus on the one, and even getting to know the survivor's story and the success can really that brings motivation and passion to keep moving forward. Challenges can be just working with the different systems in different countries, especially during COVID.
Oh,
There
wow.
was quite a few challenges that came up, trying to repatriate survivors back to their home country when there were flight issues, and challenges getting survivors having to quarantine once they landed. But honestly, law enforcement, governments worked so well with us. So I think we had about 18 repatriations last year, but we were able to do that because we worked closely with government services and law enforcement, and they were able to really support us in getting these survivors home. In one instance in Thailand, we had a charter flight for a survivor to repatriate her. So there's always challenges there, getting identification documentation. So often a trafficker will take a survivor's identification documentation, and so they come out and they don't have anything to identify them. So that can be a challenge, but that's where, again, we work closely with the government. We have legal services to really restore their identification documentation. Another challenge is we are donor funded. So we have amazing donors, but we have such a big vision. And so we would love to continue to be in more countries and offer more services, more accommodation, for example. So that can be another challenge, just managing and always having more vision than resources. Yeah.
But that's great. Having great vision, that's always a plus.
Oh, we've got vision.
Yes.
You do not lack vision.
That is always a plus, because that means that something has to happen.
Yeah.
That means that something has to happen. So you told us about the challenges, and you did highlight some challenges, especially during COVID. But can you tell us about some wins? I know you told us about the chartered flight in Thailand. What about some survivor stories, or maybe some cases or something you can share with us? And it doesn't just have to be in regard to the pandemic, just something that...
Okay. I mean, even last year in the pandemic in Cambodia, we had 4 survivors so young female survivors, we noticed a trend last year. They were approached, grew up in households where there was poverty, dropped out of school to support the family to start working. And there was this theme of these recruiters coming to these villages and showing these young teenage girls as big houses and cars and saying, you can have this if you come with me and marry this man in this country, and then you can sort of get all of this wealth and support your family and come back and move back with him. So it was about 4 survivors who entered our program last year who had been tricked with that recruitment method, gone into a neighboring country. Once they got there, they were sort of forced into sexual exploitation and trafficking, some for many years, and were able to bravely escape. One, it was a neighbor noticed that something was off, and this is where awareness of human trafficking and knowing the indicators is so important. So this neighbor had noticed this sort of young teenage girl for a few years in this situation and thought it was a bit off, and she helped this girl escape, and this girl managed to sort of bravely cross borders, international borders, come back. She was identified by the local police in Cambodia as a victim of human trafficking. They rang A21, who've been able to support her. So she's now in safe accommodation. She's seeing a psychologist. She's pursuing vocational training. We're helping her to sort of set up a small business as well. And so we see those wins. That's just one story. We see wins like that all across our 7 different aftercare locations. So that's one that comes to mind. Another one during COVID was schools shut down everywhere, and so in Cambodia we work with minor children as well as adults. And this boy had experienced a lot of developmental difficulties because he'd been experienced complex trauma, not just human trafficking, but trauma his whole life, and that led to some developmental delays. He's now in safe foster care family, and when the schools shut down, he had been struggling academically to catch up to his peers, but then he was in this new foster care family, and he had all of this time with his foster care parents who were so loving and nurturing, and they would sit down with him each day and help him to study, and he started to develop a secure attachment with the foster care parents. And then he just flourished through 2020 because he had this one-on-one time with his foster care parents, and he'd never had so much sort of love and attention. And now academically he's caught up to his peers and he's doing really well. So that's another example of how
That's
COVID
beautiful.
was able to help. Another story. Do you want another story?
Oh yes,
Sure,
we love stories.
Another story is in Greece. We had a survivor from an African nation who she'd been through a lot of trauma herself. She had 4 children. Her husband had passed away. She'd been forced to marry another man and was pregnant with him, but this other man was very abusive. And then one day she was on a bus, and this lady approached her and said, I can give you a job in Turkey. And she thought she really wanted to provide for her family, so she left her children with other extended family who would look after them. And so she went to Turkey, but it was a classic false job opportunity. She was trapped in a room, beaten, and forced to serve men day and night. And so she's pregnant. One client recognizes that actually this woman's not here by choice. He helps her to escape, which we do see that occasionally. So she manages to get to Greece, to a refugee camp on an island in Greece. The organization contacts A21. She comes into our A21 home, our shelter in Greece. She starts to attend Freedom Center. By this point, she's actually had the baby. And her focus is, I want to be able to get myself to a point where I can get my children back. So she worked for like 12 months learning the Greek language. She got a job. She would come in, and she was such a delight to the other survivors and to our staff. And she was able to get herself to a point where she then moved into an A21 apartment. So she had that independence with her baby. And she got to a point where she'd saved enough money. She graduated from our program, moved to another European country where she was seeking to be able to bring her children from her home country to meet her in that European nation. And she was just so thankful for the aftercare services. And that's just one example of a woman who had been through so much trauma in life. The death of her husband, being separated from her children, trafficked, that showed so much resilience and strength. So we see that repeatedly in all of our countries. These survivors of human trafficking have been through so much trauma. Sometimes trafficking is not the harshest trauma they've been through, sadly, but they just show incredible courage and resilience, and it's just so inspiring.
Wow.
Yes. Wow.
Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah.
We love stories.
We love stories. And, we love stories because people see movies and think that they have an understanding of what's, of what's going on. But to hear what happens in real life, to hear people who are fighting this fight and are on this side and are real, touchable human beings that are not in Hollywood, who can tell an actual, story and what these people
It doesn't always
experience.
look like taken.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially in the US. So I think it can be really good to dispel some of those myths about human trafficking. And that can be done through stories. I mean, certainly in some countries, it can occasionally look that way, but definitely in the US, we see a lot of the recruitment through the lover boy or Romeo pimp method, where a charming man will come and prey on a vulnerable young woman, typically, who is in need of love and hope for the future, and he'll pretend to fall in love with her and promise her a great future, and then get to know her, about her, information about her family, so he can later use that against her. Then isolate her, go to a new city, and then once there, will say, okay, now you have to see these men, force her to sleep with men so that they can earn money for them as a couple. And so sometimes these victims of trafficking don't actually realize that they're victims of trafficking.
Right.
They just think that they're with this boyfriend who's making them serve men.
Yeah.
So that's more of a common scenario in the US, and they may move from city to city, and then he may use the knowledge of her family and make threats against her and her family if she doesn't continue. So while she's not locked in a room or chained to a bed like we may see in some movies, or maybe the myth, there's a psychological bond there, and often we see trauma bonding.
Yes. And like you said, and the survivors we've talked to, even on this podcast, will tell you, like, you know, I saw them as my boyfriend. Like, that is exactly how they see them. They don't identify with being a victim.
That's right.
And so, that's just their boyfriend, and this is what they were doing to survive and to keep the peace, and, you know, doing their part, quote unquote, in the relationship, and, you know, just escalating to more and more violence. So, like you said, they just don't identify with that because it didn't start like that, right? They were fed all the lives. They were treated like a girlfriend at one point. And
occasionally they'll get the gifts and he'll be nice again.
Right.
It's kind of like a domestic violence cycle that we see. So I think sometimes healing in those cases can be even more challenging because they've got the betrayal of their trafficker, and maybe even sometimes still have feelings for him.
Yeah.
What is something powerful that you have learned through working with A21 and seeing the work that's being done in these different countries? What's something that you would like to share with our listeners? Maybe some advice, or maybe some myth busters, or some statistics, something.
Something powerful. Look, I think it's that change can happen. And like our founder, Christine Kane, she learned about human trafficking back in 2008 in an airport in Greece, in Thessaloniki airport. She saw these missing children posters and phoned a friend and said, who are these people who are missing? And her friend said they're the alleged victims of human trafficking. And she's like, what's human trafficking? Found out about it. And was like, well, is anyone doing anything about this? Let's do something. And I think knowing that story, knowing Christine, and then 13 years on, A21 has been able to make such a powerful impact. But it started with vision and someone saying, well, let's do something about this problem. And I think sometimes people can feel so overwhelmed with human trafficking statistics because it is such a huge crime and a problem around the world. But I really do think that when people sort of get focused, not just with anti-trafficking work, but anything in life, to go, actually, I can make a difference. So in whatever area of life that is. So if you put your mind to something and are really prepared to get in, do the hard work, get educated, that's a huge thing. You can make a difference, and you'll make mistakes along the way. So A21's 13 years old. We're still learning. We're changing things all the time. So how we operate now is very different to how we operated in 2010. And I think it's great to be open to keep evolving and developing and growing. And so I'd say, if you've got a vision to make a difference, you certainly can do it. It takes a bit of grit, but you can make a change.
You can make a difference. All right. Well, can you let the listeners know how they can get involved to help make a difference?
Yeah, well, we have our global broadcast coming up. That's actually next Friday, July 30th, which is all about equipping people with education on different recruitment methods that traffickers will use. So I think one big way of making a difference is actually education. So education and awareness, because human trafficking is sadly, it is happening all around us. And if we can be educated on the different recruitment methods, the different human trafficking, we can be the ones who then make the call to the National Human Trafficking Hotline to say, there's something a little bit off. And I think if you suspect something, like, report it. And so I think getting educated. So on our website, A21.org, there's a lot of different resources that listeners can access. So that's resources for parents and teachers to educate their children and students about human trafficking. We've got different programs there. So this global broadcast will be available on our website beyond next Friday, July 30th, which is the World Day Against Human Trafficking. And it's a great broadcast we've got Rebecca Bender, who's a survivor of human trafficking, speaking about the Loverboy Romeo pimp recruitment method. We've got different teams speaking about human trafficking. So really trying to educate the public about recruitment and sort of being aware of the different recruitment methods. So education, if we can prevent human trafficking from ever happening, then I think that is better than aftercare. And I'm passionate about aftercare, but I think prevention is definitely better than a cure. So education. Our website also has our Can You See Me campaign videos. So Can You See Me is an awareness campaign of A21. You may have seen it already. It's in the DFW airport. But the Can You See Me campaign goes through different trafficking scenarios and highlights the indicators of trafficking for people to look out for. So yeah, get educated, go to a21.org, and there's a lot of curriculum and different resources that will help to educate yourself and your family.
I know, I love the videos. Actually, you're doing a new one right now, aren't you?
Yes,
I think so.
New one that will be, if you sign up to watch our broadcast next Friday. Our new one is all about recruitment. It is powerful. I've had a little sneak peek, and it's beautifully put together.
Yeah, they're amazing. And actually, we've been working with, networking with you guys to get some of all of your videos on some of our posters, because nobody does videos like A21. No, really, they're so great.
Yeah, I love the coercion video, which is Pettia's story. I don't know if you've seen it, but that tracks the journey of a survivor who was trafficked into Greece, and her journey of aftercare, and shows her in the Freedom Center. So
that's amazing. I don't know if I've seen that one, but yeah, they're so powerful. They're so real. They depict trafficking so accurately, which is great. And there's something for everybody, whether you're in the U.S., like overseas, like in other countries, and they're great. You know, parents reach out to me sometimes and they're asking about their kids and how they talk to them, and I'm like, hey, you need to look up these A21 videos because there's one for teens. So there's something on there for everybody, and they're really, really well done. So I definitely would back that up there. We appreciate what you guys are doing so much.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you. Well, Carrie, is there anything you'd like to add, or Dr. Bell?
I think I'm good. I mean, I have enjoyed this greatly, and hopefully we get to meet in person someday, since now you're here in Texas.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and for supporting A21, and we are so excited to bring aftercare services to the DFW area.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, guys, we thank you all for listening, and thank you again, Dr. Bell, for being a guest on our podcast. And if you would like to know anything about Reclaim 611, you can email us at
support@reclaim611.org, or you can check out our website at www.reclaim611.org.
All right, this is Paula.
And this is Carrie.
And we are signing off, but don't forget to step into the fight, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.